Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mercatus Podcast, Digital Grocer, live from NRF, day one. I think this is marked episode 25?
25.
That's
right.
Season 3.
Season 3.
I can't believe.
Yeah, this has been going well.
Yeah, it's been great. And this is your host, Sylvain Perrier, President and CEO of Mercatus Technologies. And sitting to my left, not to my right as he normally is, because apparently it's different here in New York, is Mercatus' very own Senior Director of Marketing, Mark Fairhurst.
Hello, everyone.
And so, Mark, it's more than halfway through day one. Mm-hmm. We've had a lot of traction at our booth. Mm-hmm. We've had a lot of European retailers come through, some North American retailers, some of them are customers. Yeah. I mean, anything strike you?
I think the traffic has been pretty steady.
Yeah.
I'm anticipating tomorrow will be even more busy, if history is any indication. And I think a lot of retailers, they know what they're looking for. I mean, it's such a huge show. They planned out their trip ahead of time.
Right.
So to get that kind of traffic on day one is pretty rewarding, I think.
But it's also a lot to take in.
Yeah.
You know, we're downstairs, booth 1418. I know I went upstairs really quickly to see it, and it's insane.
Oh, there's some of these booths and experiences are overwhelming.
Yeah, I think it's tough when you go in, if you're a retailer, everyone goes into sales pitch mode, like right away. And there's this, no one's trying to solve problems and they're not asking questions and so on. And I think that's what makes going to a trade show so tiring, if I would expect if you're a retailer.
Yep.
And I think a trend that's a little bit different now in our podcast, you know, we've made this about the industry, not so much about us. You know, we've interviewed a competitor, with Shop Hero.
Shop Hero,
where I think we got an upcoming podcast with
Grocery Key.
Jeremy Nairn's going to be here coming into our booth.
Yep.
You know, we've had the folks, Zach from Rayleigh's on our show.
Yep.
And to kind of, you know, bring wisdom and knowledge to our listeners, we decided to bring an expert onto our show, and he's actually sitting here at the booth with us. And so joining us today on the podcast is Mr. Ron Bonacci, who is the Vice President of Advertising and Marketing at Weis Markets. Ron has had an amazing career. Before joining Weis Market, he was actually Director of Marketing in beautiful Lubbock, Texas, the home of Buddy Holly at United Supermarkets. And over the course of his career, I mean, he was part of that. He was over at Food City, S&H Solutions, and he was also part of an important team over at Kroger. I remember I met Ron years ago when I drove out to meet the team over at KVAT, Food City. Ron, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for allowing me to be here and to speak with you.
Oh, no problem. So, Ron, you and I have had a lot of late night sessions talking about so many different things and pontificating about the future and so on. And I know you were at ground zero at Kroger in the day when they went out and built out their loyalty program and they decided to bring on dunnhumby. Can you share with our listeners, what was that like in those days and those decisions that were being made?
You know, it was an amazing experience and so rewarding because I got to be on the starting edge of what became the Kroger Plus Card, launching it and then propelling that to bring in the dunnhumby from an analytical platform and to really see what the possibilities were. I don't want to share with you the success of that in the sense of the total dollars. Let me tell you, it was very, very significant in terms of sales growth. And when you looked at Kroger's over this period of time from starting back then when we did this, they had 53 quarters same-store sales growth year over year over year. So the phenomenal success of analyzing data, understanding customer insights, and then using that through the Kroger Plus platform just became a success factor that was the core pillar of the Kroger company. Back then we discussed Kroger's had to go with 4 different platforms we really had to own. We realized that gas had the same correlation with the grocery industry, so we had to get into gas and be in it in a big way. Loyalty marketing obviously had to be that anchor pillar for both of those. And then we had to get into the pharmacy business because of the aging population of the thing. And private label had to grow because we knew that if they got accustomed to purchasing our private label, that it was going to be the core value of why they would shop with us.
And so what you guys did at Kroger, do you feel that's become a template for the industry that you're in today?
Well, as you look back, you know, at that time when we did that, we didn't know where we would take that evolution, but Kroger's then became the core initiative that everybody looked at and how they would evaluate themselves. And as dunnhumby exploded across the Kroger enterprise, everybody looked at us as best in class. And I believe we truly were best in class at the time, even though they talked about other smaller groceries doing loyalty marketing.
If you think back then, you take that chunk of time when you started over at Kroger to where you are today, what are some of the most, I wouldn't say amazing innovations, but the innovations that have really shifted your industry, that really stand out to you?
You know, technology keeps advancing and it's changing in its evolution, and what we think about today, it's accelerating at the speed that is unthinkable when you really get down to it, because consumer and that mobile device today in their hands, this mobile phone that they have, it has got more power than, what they sent to the moon with the astronauts when you
Absolutely.
think about that. So that is going to be the key mechanism of which we need to know, master, and understand those consumers, their purchase history, their cycle, their likes, their dislikes, everything we need to know about that consumer and how to manage that. That was one thing that really became core and mount that we need to make sure we have. And then this explosion of e-commerce because of the Amazon and then, of course, Walmart's and Kroger's with their checklist behind, click list behind that. So we had to make sure that the rest of this industry's got to grow up in that world. And we got to make sure that we meet those consumers in an e-commerce platform, obviously, which what we did with you, as well as making sure that we understand that consumer from a BI standpoint, analytically wise, what they like, their shopping behavior, their cycles, and then meeting that needs, whether it's curbside pickup, delivery, and those aspects of what they want.
So when people call me, and Mark, I get retailers asking me tons of questions, and some of them are customers, some of them are not, right? And I always say, hey, if you have a question you're not sure, maybe reach out to Ron.
Well, thank
Ron,
you.
how many years have you been playing in the e-commerce space?
3 times I've launched an e-commerce platform. Obviously, there was one here at Weis Markets, but we took it to a different level thanks to people on my staff. They're outstanding, like Amanda, that's sitting to my left. But the idea of that was made sure that it was going to be the core platform. So we're up to 153 stores, 155 stores curbside pickup,
Right.
177 delivery. So, with your platform and making sure that we're meeting that needs. Then stepping back, I had to launch an e-commerce platform with inside Albertson's platform where I came from in Texas. And then before that with Food City, where we made that initialization launch, understanding that. So I've done it 3 times now. You learn each time you do it. Sometimes you make mistakes along the way, but then you keep getting better because you have to evolve with the consumer and the devices and the technology that's presenting itself.
No, absolutely. And that's the biggest challenge that we even find as a business when we get great ideas that are coming from, our customers, at you guys at Weis Markets, or it could be at Smart and Final and so on. It's not so much executing on the idea of their solution, but how do you truly commercialize something that is not only servicing the needs of their marketing folks that are involved, but operations or information technology. That's not easy because you're having to bring a lot of people in the room.
And even educating your shoppers too.
Well, educating the shopper. If you look, the most simple of features that we have on our platform that people think you just can't live without. So I'll give an example. Emailing a shopping list. It's table stakes. You have to have it.
Absolutely.
But here's the reality. Less than maybe 0.3% of shoppers actually use that feature. But it's not necessarily those micro elements of functionality that are really important. That's why I like working with Ron. It's like, what is fundamentally the big picture of what we're trying to achieve here? We just launched AI in the platform, I think just before Christmas of 2019. And so far it's going really well. I mean, we have AI is affecting search. It's affecting everything that's being displayed on the website. Right. Prior to that, we had a major launch of the integration of Shipped into the Mercatus platform, and I think there's going to be tons of other stuff. Ron, with this collective experience that you have in this space, if you were sitting across from another retailer that was considering getting into e-commerce, whether it's Mercatus or someone else, it doesn't matter, what advice would you give them?
Well, first and foremost, you got to make sure that all levels of the company, from top executives down, understand it and get it, because The reality is, in the grocery industry, if you're not in e-commerce, as they said I call it the shot across the bow, way back when Supermarket News wrote about it, was that if you're not in e-commerce, you may perish. And that may well be the case in the smaller and mid-sized chains in America because of the Amazons and the growth of Walmarts and everyone else in the e-commerce space. You've got to survive, and you can't afford to lose 3, 5, 10, 12, 15% of your business in sales and give that away to your competition and then think that you're going to still survive in this space. So you've got to find somebody like Markets with an e-commerce platform and all the tool sets to keep looking forward in order to meet that customer's needs of tomorrow and at least be on par with your competition. Hopefully you've outgrown them because of your personalization. Remember that in-store execution is critical in this, so don't ever walk away from that, because that personal shopper makes an experience that is lasting for that customer. So if you can train your people well in the store, utilizing the technology that's given through us, and then making sure that connection is there with the customer, with all the other e-commerce platform, it really makes a true wonderful experience for that customer who's going to come back again and again. And you'll be successful long term.
Absolutely. So the one thing, at one point, we brought one of our retailers, existing customers who's wanted to expand into click and collect and so on. We brought them over to Weis to visit one of their stores. And I remember Ron talking about, one thing you really, really need to focus on is good quality product data.
Yes.
Right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's something I laugh about because it's painful.
Okay.
Realize that the grocery industry was never designed to have an e-commerce platform. So every item in the store was designed in descriptive-wise. That was the register receipt, which is 32 characters long.
Right.
So they truncated chicken and boneless and anything else that you can think of. So all of a sudden, when you launch a platform, you have got bad data immediately. And now you have to rethink your entire thought process, because when you add a new item, not only are you adding it for the register receipt, you got to add it for common language for the consumer, for e-commerce, as well as descriptive enough so the customer understands what they're buying, and then making sure that picture association is right with that product. So when I'm looking for boneless chicken or whatever those products are, it makes sense to the common consumer that is investigating. Then your SEO, your search engine, has got to really mirror all of those consumer thought processes, because it's not just mathematicals, but it's personalization from that customer, how they think and how they look at their product. So you've got to make sure that from an e-commerce platform that you're taking the needs from a search engine to product description is more common focus to that consumer base.
Yeah, and that's so true. And the one thing we've realized working with our pool of retailers is, at the end of the day, if you don't have good product data, it has a detrimental effect, first and foremost, on the product categories that the products show up in. It affects the search engine. It completely affects the discoverability of anything. And consumers are actually, this is an interesting statistic, I can't quote the number because I can't remember it, but consumers are less apt to buy a product if they can't visually identify it with a picture. And that's an issue.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. And one thing that we're realizing now at Markets, in our integrated search technology in the aisle 1 integration, we're actually saving copies of the search terms people are looking for. And that gives us the benefit of generating spelling mistakes and so on. But what we're starting to see in certain parts of the United States, where you would have a Spanish-speaking consumer or a different ethnic group, they may search for products differently by reversing some words.
Yeah, the syntax of the search.
And if you're not geared for that, that's a bit of a challenge we're having to invest in to actually take the technology to the next level.
But that's the advantage of AI. So it takes the laborious component out of it.
Yeah. Well, it's like when we regionalized our product to support French language for Canada.
Yeah.
Right? Being Canadian, we didn't do that at the start.
Right.
We had to tweak the search engine to support French.
Yep.
And that's differently. So along the same lines, Ron, like if you were advising a retailer on strategy and long-term vision, and I know you have a long-term vision where you want to take e-commerce, what would you advise them on?
Well, I would advise them to do their exploration with e-commerce platforms such as what Mercatus presents, but then go back and make sure that you're grounded in your planograms, your category management, because that's the fundamentals of which it starts with. So you got to have image base that you spoke about, you got to have description base, and then you got to make sure that it's unique to each store, so you can't just have a generic one and then that consumer's shopping and the product's not in that store because it's a much smaller platform. So you got to start with the fundamentals first.
Right.
Once you have that, then you can go out and get a platform that you have and make sure that from an evolution standpoint that AI is in that thought process, communications is in that process, whether that's an email or text message, and then building those shopping lists from past history,
Right.
as well as the recommendation engines that you're going to put in from an AI platform, so that you can continually grow that customer's experience with you. Know that you're on that journey with them, because it's personalization at that point.
Yes.
It truly comes down to their likes, their dislikes, and how you can grow that. And then always bring the opportunity, as the grocery industry would love to do, is how do I actually help grow that sales with inside our basket? So suggestive selling, or products you might think about, or new to the market. What are those kind of things that can actually add that extra item in the basket? Because in some sense, that's a holy grail for the grocery industry. If I could get an extra item in that basket, I'm actually fortifying the opportunity to sales growth.
I think Weis, I don't know, Mark, if you'd agree, but I think they're one of the very few regional retailers that actually has an integrated AI engine at this point.
Yeah, I think you guys you're bleeding edge right now.
Well, thank you.
I think we talked about this earlier today.
Yeah.
Last year, AI personalization the messaging was everywhere at NRF. Just sitting here at the booth, I can see 3 booths that have AI on it.
Yeah.
They're talking about it, but Weis actually now has it in place. It's in working, so it's phenomenal.
That's great.
The other thing I would say is you've got to have great people you surround with. I'm blessed to have a wonderful team.
That's true.
I've got one of those people to my left that's in charge of my e-commerce platform,
Yeah.
Amanda. She's outstanding. She thinks and cares about our customers. She cares about what their experience is like, and when she sees problems or issues, she's bubbling that up. How do we solve that? How do we make that go forward? She's presenting that to you guys at Mercatus, and we're constantly thinking about how that experience is going to grow and more positive.
Yeah.
And so you just have to look at that from an over opportunity for future growth.
Oh, absolutely. The one, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I had recently had a conversation with Trent Brookshire, who's the COO over at Brookshire's in Tyler, Texas. Trent came over, flew into Toronto to our office with John Deanna, CIO. Actually, John, I think now is CSO, strategy officer. And Trent was enamored with the Mercatus culture. And so he actually sent in his HR team to spend, I think they spent 3 days with our HR team to understand the culture. And the one thing that, remember, we stayed up late one night, Trent and I, talking about this, is that success in e-commerce is not just about the technology.
Absolutely.
It's about the people that come together, the culture of those two teams meshing and really focusing. I like to say at the business, let's not just talk about the positives, because the positives will only get us so far. Let's deal with the negatives. And you got to do that in partnership with your retailers.
And I'm not afraid to call you and say, hey, I need this done or this
I know.
done. That's the great thing about this collaboration, and I call it a true partnership, because if I ask you or I look to the future and I want to do things, not only do you listen, we start putting out a roadmap. Is that possible? And what's the timeline, and how fast can we grow if we need to go in that area? And we may need to switch directions sometimes. We just never know, because different things that bubble up. And as you know, we from a search engine optimization, we realized we had these holes we had to fill. And all of a sudden, you look to the next level, how that could be done, from syntax to synonyms and those kind of things you have to apply to it. And the next thing you know, we're right back on track with making sure we're meeting tomorrow's needs.
Yeah, I know when Ron's got an idea, because he'll be in a vendor meeting and I'll get a text message. Hey, have you integrated with this? And I'm like, okay, what is he thinking about? And and then that night I'm in the car and we're talking about, okay, how's that going to work? How's this going to work? Then we got to worry about taking it to the next level between both of our teams, and how does that work? So it's kind of interesting. When you think about your vertical as a whole, and I know personalization, you're very passionate about it. Are there any things that you see aside from that as being, I think that's got a possibility to be something big?
Well, I think I call it hyperkinetic personalization. And that is not just the experience on e-commerce, but how do I take the experience in the store? How do I look at shopping list? How do I meet tomorrow's needs? You know as well as I do that Samsung and all these other kitchen appliances are going to be so inundated with technology. And when you couple that with Amazon or Google or whatever platforms are out there, they're going to know what the customer's consuming. And how do we integrate with that so that we're prepared and ready for that next shopping experience so that we have it in the store? We may have already shopped it. We may have already got it prepared. I think that's the next holy level of which we need to think about, because the consumer is going to be ready for that. They're adopting technology with Amazon and Google. I mean, yesterday, Amanda's got Amazon. I got Google at home, and know, they know what we're doing. And why not connect that grocery experience to that?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the interesting thing is, I don't know if Amazon ever released it. It was the microwave with the integrated Alexa.
I don't think they have.
And you could take certain products were pre-programmed.
Yeah. It's coming though.
You could scan it, put it in, and it would know the time to prep it.
Yeah.
Right.
At home, we are an Amazon Echo device home. I've now in some of the bedrooms, that's how we turn on the lights.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't do it because I'm lazy. It's just like
convenient.
Well, I'm a bit of a geek that way.
Yeah. You are an early adopter.
But when Wi-Fi goes down, Lord help me.
It's back to the dark ages.
Dark ages.
That's when Michelle gets up to turn on
that's
the
how I
lights.
start a fire in the middle of the living room to heat the house. What are you looking forward to in 2020, Ron?
Well, we're going to grow out our e-commerce platform a little bit further, especially in our curbside pickup. We look from a consumer perspective, making sure we have every store that we can has that opportunity.
Yep.
The other thing is I'm going beyond just the consumer shopping experience. And what I mean by that is I want to know that we care about the customer, and I want the customer to know we care about them. So I'm looking at health and wellness as an initiative.
Yep.
So if we have indication or they want to tell us, because we're building out our new campaign manager and our new profile platform, so if they identify themselves and say, hey, we have need to know about diabetes, or we have need to know about celiac disease, or any of these other disease states, and or health wellness statements, I want to make sure that we have the shopping platform that's going to be there for them. So because that is a need, that's a necessity in their family. They can't get away from that. And so we got to be prepared and ready from that perspective, that we can help them grow out of that disease, or at least longevity of life is important.
Absolutely.
So, we're talking to hospitals, we're talking to medical centers, we're talking to different medical platforms that are out there on how do we make sure that that's there. Inside our store, we use a health attribute color code barcode system. But we got to go beyond that. So, a consumer can look and say, oh, yeah, that's got no sugar. But how do we help them be healthy?
I was recently diagnosed with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. And the pain is excruciating. It lasts for 20 minutes. At the very least, the challenge I have is not having IBS, is educating myself. My doctor will give me some stuff, but where do we go? Where do we normally go when we're diagnosed with something? We go to Google. And we go to WebMD. And I'm not knocking WebMD. I think the service they provide is great. But when I go into a grocery store, at the very least, I know I can't have dairy. I got to really minimize my caffeine intake. But there are other foods I don't know. There is systematically no technology, no platform in Canada, no grocery retailer that can help me. I'm not looking to solve my problem, but ease the burden of the issue. So I commend you for wanting to take that on.
And taking the mystery out of the product and the product ingredients.
Right. The food that goes. I'm blessed to have a daughter that's a pharmacist, and we're blessed to have our grocery store that's got dietitians, and a combination of those, and with AI platforms and that are available out there, it really gives us a leg up to how to manage that from a perspective for health and wellness for customers, because eventually we all have some illnesses or something that's going to bear upon us, and we got to make sure that we're putting the right foods in our body.
Absolutely. Ron, I want to say thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get a hold of Ron, I think you just go to his LinkedIn page. You connect with him there, or better yet, you can try to reach out to him by calling Weis Markets.
Thank you.
I know he's a busy guy, so I'm not sure if he's going to be able to return all the phone calls or the emails. And Mark, how do people get a hold of us?
As usual, www.mercatus.com. All of our social handles are listed there.
Perfect.
So-
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of Digital Grocer. Keep an eye out for the next episode, which I think we're going to be recording tomorrow
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning
Yeah.
here at NRF
Yeah.
2020. Thank you so much, folks.